All right, good morning, good morning. How's everyone doing? It wasn't bad. Wasn't great. I know it's day 3. Welcome to day 3 of SharePoint Conference 2014. I'm starting a couple minutes early so that I can sort of warm you guys up a bit. I know that the coffee here is a little weak, so I want to get you going. How's everyone doing? That's good for about a quarter of you. How's everyone doing? All sorts of answers now. It's not bar time yet, guys. Let's not get too rowdy on me. Well, it's great to be here, and it's great to see you all so early this morning to come here and talk about governance. Well, I'll talk. I guess you'll listen. So a few ground rules before we get going. First and foremost, we are recording this for Channel 9 afterwards, audio only, which means fortunately you don't have to see me, but it does mean that you're going to have to go online to check out the session afterwards if you want to hear it again for your colleagues, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is, if you have a question, we're going to take questions at the end, all at once, and we'll get you guys to line up in front of the mic. Otherwise, I have to repeat it, and then it drags a bit, so we don't want to do that. So questions through the mic at the end. My name is Eric Riz, and this is a strategic and pragmatic conversation on governance. Tell me that is not the most exciting title for this conference. One person clapping, and somebody on my team on the far side clapping, which is sort of par for the course this morning. Well, I don't have presidential credentials behind me, but hopefully you guys will enjoy the session and you'll get something out of it, and you'll go back to your offices and say, wow, I did this really well, or maybe not as well. If you're coming in now, there's lots of room sort of at the front. I don't spit when I talk, so come on up and grab a seat there. I'm the executive vice president of a company called Concatenate. I'm sure you guys have all heard of Concatenate. It's your favorite Excel function. I get that one a lot. Concatenate is a Toronto-based SI and ISV. There are 2 flyers that are on your chairs, should be on your chairs, and I'll talk about those in great detail. They're both show specials that we're starting here for the first time, and we're really excited about them, so I'll talk about those in about 73 minutes or so. Before I get going, I suppose we'll talk a bit about our agenda. And I'm trying my best for your reference to monitor Twitter as possible. So if you want to tweet to me at RizInsights, R-I-Z Insights, then I'll see what you're saying. So go ahead and do that. There is the second screen option, if you've heard about it, on Yammer, which I'm told is not having a great morning. So as much as I'd love you to use the second screen option, if you can get it to work, let me know, because we haven't been able to yet. So keep your questions for the end, and we can all learn together. So what are we going to talk about this morning? Well, we're going to talk a lot about the governance journey. Now, this is a 300-level session. It's a deep dive. So that's a great thing, but it also means that a deep dive for 650 people, which are the number of seats in this room, is a pretty tough thing to talk about. So I'm going to try to be as deep as I can be, but as broad as I can be, so it's applicable to everyone. So if I don't answer something very specific you're looking for, come up and ask me afterwards, or today or tomorrow until the show ends, and I'll be happy to answer you. You'll have all my contact information on the last slide as well, so we'll be able to stay in touch. So we'll talk about the governance journey. We'll talk about IT governance, information management. Who's here to talk about information management? All the people at the front. I wonder if there's a trend there. We'll see how that goes. Application management. 4 of you, great. IT governance. Okay, most of you, that's excellent. And what about strategies? How many of you feel like your role in your organization is strategic in nature? That's awesome. You're all in the right place. Excellent. Very exciting. We're going to talk about all these fun and exciting things. We're going to talk about knowing your limits. We're going to talk about knowing where your information is and isn't. We're going to talk about the importance of having these guys, these mobile devices. As someone actually tweeted me there, thank you very much. That wasn't distracting at all. So we're going to talk a lot about mobile, right? We heard President Clinton talk on Monday. My days are a little messed up right now, but we heard President Clinton talk on Monday about the fact that there were 50 websites when he came into office in '92. So was that the stat? There's an argument I have with a friend of mine. Was it 1.5 or 5.0? What do you guys think? 1.5. So you guys let me say the wrong thing, and then when I said, is that right, you all nodded. Okay. Very governed answers, guys. I appreciate that. A lot of focus here. Well, let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about why you're here. Okay? If you look up on these slides, and these slides will be available to you afterwards, they'll be available for download on Yammer. If you can't get onto Yammer for some crazy reason, which I've never heard of before, then just email me and I'll send them over to you or point you to a link. So do any of these things sound familiar to you? Right? There's no scenario where SharePoint should be deployed without planning or governance considerations. The sooner you can develop a strategy around each element in governance, the better. These things sort of resonate with some of you? Yeah, okay. That's a good thing. All right, now governance, fortunately or unfortunately, is a bit of a black hole when it comes to SharePoint. Okay, we all know that. Why? Because SharePoint gives you the flexibility and extendability to go online and create stuff. Now what happens when you create stuff and you acquire things? Clutter, right? When was the last time you saw the four walls of your garage? Yeah, those of you laughing think it's funny. Those of you that aren't laughing are the ones that really know that you haven't seen the four walls in your garage, right? So it's a bit of an issue there. So we want to get to the conversation around knowing where your information is, knowing where your sites are, knowing who's managing this information, and knowing that everything that's coming in and being accessed is being accessed by the right people at the right time in the right place. Right? Y'all with me? There's a microphone there. Be careful. Okay, enough. I can wait. You're good? Okay. For those of you that are sitting in the back, there are some seats up front, so come on up. That poor girl, I'm so sorry. Okay. So, enough about me for a few minutes. Let's talk about you guys. Let's see who's in the room. Which are you? How many of you are small? I will kick one of these boxes over, by the way, at some point. Which are you? How many of you are with small organizations, 1 to 100s? A few of you? Okay. Where are my mediums? 1 to 1,000. 25, 30%. Where am I large? Holy moly. Clearly for this presentation, I should have slid the scale up a little bit there. Okay, no problem. Let's figure out what you're using. Now, do not assume that I will just call this out in order. So how many of you are on 2010? Very good. How many of you are on 2007? How many of you are on 2013? For those of you that, no. Hey, I tell the jokes here, okay? So, for my 2013s, hands up still? Okay, how many of you are on-prem? No. You can't. How many? All right, hands down. 2013s, hands up. How many of you are on-prem? Same hand up. If you were not on-prem, put your hand down. Okay, now how many of you are in the cloud? Okay, this is going to be a long morning, guys. I did not think it was going to be like this, but that's okay. Okay, now, fess up, let's all be honest here. How many of you are on 2003? It's okay. Let's go. We need to know this. This is important. Hands up, all the way up. A few of you, okay, it's okay. We're doing a support group tonight, 8 o'clock. At some V-bar, Tau bar, they all have weird names here, I don't know. Okay, now, let's keep going. What's your area of responsibility? So, as far as governance is concerned, how many of you are on the implementation side of governance? A few of you. Okay, how many of you are on the finance side of governance? Departmentally? Nobody, okay, that's not a bad thing. Operations? Some. IT? All of you, good. C-level? Okay, now a couple points I want to make. How many of you put up your hand more than once? Look around. Hands up. Okay, everyone look around. Look around to see how many people are dual role individuals in the organization. Okay, this is critical. Now, here is my last question before we get rolling, and it really starts to get exciting. How many of you are end users? Okay. Hands down. How many of you look at, touch, live, breathe, can spell SharePoint? Have ever touched SharePoint, right? Okay, now, let's just get one thing straight here. You guys are all end users, okay? It's very important when you, I'm going to kick this over, I swear to you. So it's very important that you know where you are in your organization, right? One of the first ways to kill your governance implementation is by not knowing who you are and therefore not having the right roles, not having the right responsibilities, and then blowing things up, okay? So what you want to do is know who you are, and once we know who you are, you can start to get involved in governance. So we're all end users first and foremost. We all agree? Do we not agree? Anybody who doesn't agree? There's lots of people in the back that are standing, so just saying. Okay. So our governance journey, our SharePoint journey. This is the, I'll be honest, this is the slide that I spent the most time on, so I hope you love it. So this is our governance SharePoint journey. This is our SharePoint journey at Concatenate. This is what we live and breathe on. This is all about where you should be and what you should be doing with your organization, okay? So we start off with executive buy-in. We work your organization up to scale through portal adoption, information hub, BIs and dashboards, critical processes, and strategic operations. And yes, I always speak that quickly. I have to consciously slow down so that I can be understood and heard. So we're going to talk about this a little bit, and then we'll start to get into the governance portion of things. So how many of you look at this and say, we need that? Is the mic on? Okay. So if you're looking at this and you're saying, we need this, it's not a bad thing, okay? And you can be honest. We're all friends here now. It's me and 700 of my closest friends. It's all good. So what we need is SharePoint. What SharePoint does very well, well, there's lots of things SharePoint does very well. What SharePoint doesn't do as well is it doesn't give you that lifesaver, right? Not the candy, right? The life preserver. Something to help you float. And when we get involved in our client projects, we find that the first area of failure is that there was never anything done on the strategic side to get started. Why? Because someone went out to a conference, they came back with some media and a license, they installed it, and guess what? You had SharePoint, right? Anyone deal with something like that? I did. I'd have both hands up right now. Okay? And when that happens, it can happen often, it can happen quite well, but it can also blow you up real quick, and we don't want that. So having a strategy, having a journey, having defined milestones that will allow you to go through your SharePoint implementation and go through your SharePoint organization on your projects is something that's really critical. So we put this together as that life preserver for our clients, and you guys are all welcome to adopt this as best as possible. On the bottom, the numbers are, they're actually not there for anything. They're just there to look pretty. No, I'm just kidding. The reason the numbers are there is because that's, in my mind, and there's conversation about this, but in my mind, that is the percentage of effort, more or less, that it takes on the journey to get you going. So it's executive buy-in, portal adoption, information hub. Information hub, by the way, is my favorite one because an information hub means that everyone is going into SharePoint to get their work done. All right? Not to find something or look at something. They're in there to get their job done. Let's keep moving. So this is a fireside conversation. Okay? That's why I called the session a strategic and pragmatic conversation on governance, because I want this to be a conversation more than anything else. So I'm going to talk through some strategies. I'm going to talk through some guidance, and I hope you guys all enjoy it. So let's kick our feet up and get going. So when 2013 came out, my good friends at Microsoft were kind enough to put together this really, really straightforward, almost a roadmap of what to do with governance. Okay, how many of you have seen this? Look familiar? Right? Now, isn't that straightforward? It's so simple, right? You didn't read this? How many of you have actually seen this? I'm just curious. Okay. So those of you that didn't, do you look at this and think this is really intuitive and easy to use? Good. Good. Neither do I. You can stay. So how do you get to governance success? That is the question. The answer, after these messages, pragmatic governance. So I won't read many slides to you, but this one I will. For any information technology department, governance is a prerequisite for enterprise collaboration and automation. Everyone still with me? It's a set of policies, roles, responsibilities, and processes. Policies, roles, responsibilities, and processes. How many of you have really strong policies in your organization? Look around. Maybe a quarter of the room. Not a good thing. The rest of you are really happy to be here because it means you're not back in your office dealing with it, right? That's why it's great to be at conferences. So strategic and pragmatic governance falls into three buckets. We have policies, guidance, and enforcement. And I want you to know that when I made this slide, I used that bucket for a reason, because it's one of those buckets that they bring alcohol to your table to. It sort of fell into the whole Vegas motif, so I used it. Anyway, so policies are all about what you may do. Okay? Guidance is a suggested way to do it, and enforcement is what you have in place to make sure you do it. Now, how many of you were at the track party last night? Wasn't that awesome? That was the first time I've been in a car going that quickly without flashing lights behind me. Or as I call it, a police escort. That was awesome. So on the enforcement side, it was a great time. On the enforcement side, if you're screaming down the road at 55 miles an hour in a 20 zone and there are no flashing lights behind you, are you speeding? Of course you are. Where's the enforcement? It's not there, right? You know there isn't going to be a cop there to give you a ticket. So whether we like it or not, SharePoint is very similar, isn't it? If you create a policy, you will have somebody in your organization that wants to break the policy. Everyone with me? Of course. We have a policy internally that says that no document should be emailed back and forth between our staff, our partners, our, everyone who's involved with us, okay? Now this is what? It's a pipe dream, right? It's wonderful in practice, but it doesn't always work as well as you'd hope it would. So what happens when a policy doesn't work? You have what? Enforcement problems. How do you enforce it? How do you figure out what and where and how to enforce something which not everyone is using? There's a talk. So I've been speaking in the SharePoint community for about 5 years now, and every year I end up spending a great deal of time putting together new sessions which will be presented at different conferences throughout the year. I do about 12 shows during the year, different places, different countries, whatnot. And one of the ones that I am now putting together for a show that's coming up, you'll see it at the end in April, is actually called Why SharePoint Should Be on Your Annual Review. Isn't that a great idea? Yeah, if you're using it, it's a great idea. Right? If you're not following your policies and you're not following the guidance that you've put in place, it's not such a great idea, is it? Would you want to be evaluated on something that you may or may not be using as correctly as you could be? Possibly not. Possibly not. Because the reality is, this is important. This is what's going on. What happens with apps? What happens with 2013? What happens with the hybrid model between on-prem and cloud and moving things around? We'll be talking about this a lot. What happens when you're going down that road and it looks like that? It's pretty tough to govern. And what happens if your data is in one country and you're in another? I'm from Canada. Well, I'm from Connecticut, but I live in Canada. So I am now very much away from my information, but I still expect that my laptop and my Surface and my phone, because I always have a minimum of 3 devices on me, I expect them all to be synchronized and give me everything I need. Because when I'm at 34,000 feet or whatever it is, I need it all at my fingertips. I can't be offline. How many of you have been offline during the show? This is a trick question, right? The wireless here is... I got 4G LTE, it works well. If anybody wants to check their email, that gentleman just offered. So what happens when you're in a device-centric area, like my little guy there with my hairstyle, and you have all these devices and you can't have the information you need, or you don't have the right access to the information you need? You have, really? There we go. You have chaos, right? Now what happens when you have chaos? There's different types of chaos. There is something funny. There are different types of chaos. So apparently that's Chaos, South Carolina. I looked that up. I Googled it with Bing, just so you know. And so I'll be here all week. Thank you very much. There's traffic chaos. If you've ever been to Kruger Park in South Africa, that's traffic chaos, right? That's rush hour there. That's a different kind of problem. If you've ever been to Toronto, how many of you have been to Toronto? Did you have this experience at the airport? Right? How do you feel when you come off your plane and that's what you see? This happened in December, right? This was not pretty, or January, I believe. They had a mild shutdown because of some weather or something, because it never snows in Toronto. So they couldn't predict that at all, and that's what everyone came home to. And then you have a different kind of chaos. This is chaos that we all live day in, day out. You go to a meeting, and you sort of whiteboard an idea, you have a concept, and you give people a bunch of stickies, and then you go, okay, this was awesome, great meeting, thank you so much, guys. I'm going to take some notes now. And you see this. Right? That's rather chaotic, too. Now, let's get into the data side of things. 1 out of 4 workers today has been working for, it says a company, but I'll say your company, for less than a year. Okay? Take that one step further. More than 1 out of every 2 are working for a company that they have worked for less than 5 years. Right? How many of you have been with your company for less than a year? Well, that blew that stat. All right. What about 1 out of 2? Let's see if this one works. It could work. 1 out of 2, less than 5 years. Thank you. Even if you're lying to me, I appreciate the fact that you made the stat true, so that's great. But that's the truth. So on the information side, on the data side, how much of your information is in your head? How much practical knowledge, organizational knowledge, critical business information goes in and out of your office every day, 9, 5, whatever the timing is, and you hope to, that it comes back the next day, right? What happens if your laptop goes down or your Surface goes down? I mean, by down, I don't mean a technical failure. I mean, you tried to feed it a Coke or a coffee overnight. Or your mobile device goes down. These are not good things, right? Anyone ever had that? I fed multiple laptops, various beverages. They didn't like any of them, okay? So you end up in a situation where you have this beautiful $1,000 machine, which is now garbage because you broke it. But all my data's on there. And if my data's on there, I can't do my job. And if I can't do my job, I'm in big trouble. I can't tell my boss that I killed my laptop for the 2nd time this year because there's nothing in the budget to help me. So what do? You go to OneDrive. I wasn't sure if that was going to be a joke or not, but clearly it wasn't, and I appreciate that. You all know that now that SkyDrive is called OneDrive, so you have OneDrive, right? You have OneNote. Did you guys hear what they're going to call Bing? They're changing it to One Direction. Okay. Thank you. I only tell jokes to drink my coffee. That's the only reason. It's not for your enjoyment at all. So where and why does governance fail? Well, it's too restrictive. It's not reviewed often enough. It's not aligned strategically. That's my favorite one. It is not being maintained with the times, right? Oh, that was last year. I don't know about you, but in our organization, when a year goes by and you mark the calendar and you do the New Year's thing, it's a decade. It might as well be a decade because that's what's happened in that period of time. Unforeseen external factors, changing capabilities in the marketplace. Your governance plan has to scale to leverage capabilities and offerings. Okay, all these sound good. But what are your business goals? For those of you that are taking pictures, we'll make these available afterwards on Yammer, or you can email me and I'll send you a link. So what are your business goals? Have you created an IT strategy? Good question. Let's go into some of the differences and figure out some of the differences between our true content here and figure out whether or not you've created that strategy and how you've aligned to it. So these are 4 areas that were critical in 2010, and then they've changed in 2013. But don't underestimate the vastness of 2013. So we have, and actually, funny story for you. When you get your deck together, as a speaker, you go into the production office downstairs, and you sit down with 3 monitors and 2 other people, and they go through all your stuff to make sure that you've got everything licensed and no spelling errors, because that would be bad, and all that stuff. So I didn't have an image for the phone, because I couldn't find one, because all the white images don't belong to Windows phones. I don't know why, but it took about 20 minutes to find the right phone there, so I hope you appreciate the phone. So differences: farm management, custom solution security, information management. These are all lovely things, right? Very important. But how do those impact and change as you move into hybrid or a cloud environment? As you moved into social? How many of you are social? You consider yourselves to be social? All right, I see my Twitter feed here. You guys are pretty social. Thank you for all the tweets. So it's all about social these days. People are publishing information, not to their corporate intranet. They're publishing information to anywhere, to blogs, to Yammer, to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, right? Information is everywhere, but it's up to us, and by us I mean you, because I don't want to take responsibility for this, to set your companies up for long-term success. How do you do that without a strategy? It's not easy. We have critical issues on our hands. So as you get into social, there's a larger, longer conversation about how to get information in a controlled, confined space down into the hands of the people that need it. Then, of course, you have apps. How many of you are using apps? Apps, of course, were made to be a really exciting thing in the mobile device world first, right? When I moved from a phone to a Windows phone, I knew that I was going to be losing functionality because not all of the apps that I want, that I use, that I depend on are on the Windows platform. So what do you have? Then you have a BYOD issue on your hands. How many of you have BYOD policies in your organizations? Just a few. Look around. A lot. About 30%, I would say. So the social conversation is becoming more and more important. The app conversation is becoming more and more important, and the mobile conversation is becoming critical, right? Because when you leave your office, when I go to the gym, I don't have my Surface with me. I don't have my laptop with me. I have my mobile device with me. And people somehow send me things and expect me to be able to read it, respond to it, all of that. It doesn't leave anymore. You're always with your device, you're always with your devices, and it's always with you. It never leaves you. So we need to have strategies that incorporate that. So in a nutshell, that's 2013. Any questions? Good. You want to make sure that you put up one slide where people are sort of interactive. This is not that slide. But lo and behold, we'll get there. So I'm going to run through these real fast. And this is a Microsoft slide, so it is available online. User experience is something that's come up more and more now in the context of governance, because user demands and user expectations have become more and more prominent, shall we say, in the broader conversation. It's no longer just about having the information at my fingertips. Now I want to have it in this really sexy way. Right? Everyone with me? Thank you for being with me. Okay. Everybody else is sort of fuzzy on that. That's okay. We will come back to it. So work management. How are you managing the information, the actual work that's happening in your organizations? Cloud, mobile, we've talked about some of these things. But what we want to do is take a look at some of these in more detail. And in more detail, we will now get into IT governance. Everyone excited? Anyone else? Anyone with me? Still with me? Okay. So IT governance, or as I call it, the obligatory title slide. Making or updating your plan. How many of you may notice I like to ask questions of the audience because it's a strategic and pragmatic conversation, right? So in my conversation, how many of you had an actual governance plan when you rolled out SharePoint? So I want you to know it cost me $100 to have this guy sit in the front row and do that. So I hope you all appreciate it. There's a hat going around somewhere. If anyone wants to chip in, just act natural. So that was actually very good, because even though I didn't plan it, because it tells you a lot, right? Some of you are like, yeah, we had a plan. It's all good. It's wonderful. And then you have one person who is incredibly shy and reserved, who laughs because, no, I don't have a governance plan. There's no planning and governance, right? There's no crying in baseball. There's no planning and governance. It's an unfortunate reality. And for those of you that have a governance plan, I hope that you are still using your governance plan, because I've been involved in a lot of governance planning over the years, a lot of Fortune 500 companies that you would recognize the names of, companies whose breakfast cereals you probably ate this morning. And guess what? One of the things that they didn't understand the most is that governance and governance planning is a living, breathing thing. You don't just put your governance plan together, and thank you to those of you that are nodding, but you don't just put your governance plan together and leave it, right? You don't just throw it in place and then walk away. Oh, no, I'm done. Project's over. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful seeing you, right? It's a living, breathing thing. It has to be updated. Why? Because 1 out of 2 of your employees has only been there for a year. That means when you have your governance plan, you put it in place in January 2013. By January 2014, it was out of date. And if you look around the room, you have people who don't understand where you've come from. And that's why governance can fall apart. So when you make that plan, you'll need to look at things like security. You need to look at things like external users. Thank you. You need to look at who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it. You need to look at the on-premise conversation. You need to look at how you are tailoring your third-party solutions. You need to look at supporting IT services. How many of you have some sort of, a lot of you are enterprise, 1,000 or more, how many of you have some sort of support service organization that is supporting you? If you need help with IT, with whatever, right, hands up. Those support organizations, do they have a governance plan? Yeah, no one's laughing now, are they? It's a harsh reality. So then we have corporate data, and I'll be talking about this in a few slides. On the corporate data slide, where do you store your information when you're using apps? If you have what we like to call, I'll just say it. We call it a fart app, okay? Right. So if you have your favorite fart app, and it's sitting on your site somewhere, and it's managing your data, who is putting that data into it? Who's managing it? Who's consuming it? And on the consumption side, I take it back to user. I have to be careful how I count. See that? So on the corporate data side, you have to be careful how your information is coming back and being consumed on the user experience side. So these are all critical considerations and things we have to work on. Because in the online environment, it's too easy to have cheaper storage. It's too easy to have data redundancy issues, failover issues, all sorts of issues. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place in order to make sure that we don't fall on our faces and we can't get up again, right? We want to make sure this is a living, breathing thing that if we do get a scrape, we just throw a Band-Aid on top of it and we wait for it to heal and we fix it, okay? We don't just throw it under the stage here and hope that nobody ever talks about it again. And that's what ends up happening. I do feel badly for those of you that are actually sitting in the back on the floor. So there are a lot of purple people up here, or seats, so come on up. On the hybrid side, here it is. There it is. My favorite three-letter word, SLAs. Modifying your SLAs, we're going to talk about this in a fair amount of detail. Modifying your SLAs, creating and modifying them to address the changing model is critical, okay? So many of you that have those service organizations and service layers, people that admitted to having an IT support group, you're the ones that have some sort of SLA with those people. If you're online, what do you expect to have as far as availability is concerned? 3 nines? 5 nines? Right? 99.9% uptime? 99.999% uptime? Right? You want to be available online all the time. Otherwise, we have an issue on our hands. If that's the case, and you have that SLA, how do you modify that for a hybrid model? What considerations do you have to make to put into your plan in order to execute, in order to make sure it aligns to your strategy, to make sure that it's online and available when it needs to be? Then, of course, we have policies, guidance, and enforcement, the 3 buckets we talked about earlier. We want to make sure that all those have their own due diligence paid to them too. Then you have why hybrid. So why would some people want to do a hybrid model? Because if any of you are with, I don't know, banks, insurance companies, just to name 2, people that are with banks, insurance companies always nod when I say that. It's amazing. There are people nodding right now because I said that. You want to keep your sensitive data on-premise. One of the largest problems we have with the cloud model in Canada is that we and they want to keep all their data inside. So if you are some sort of cloud hosting provider, one of the things that we do at Concatenate is we have a hosted model for SharePoint. We have a platform that we've built, and that platform is available online, and we want to make sure that that is available all the time. So what do we do when we talk to an organization who says, well, we want to keep our stuff in Canada only, or we want to keep our stuff in the States only, or we're going to keep it on-premise because it's critical for us? There's credit card numbers, or we're Target, and we've been involved in some sort of issue in the past where someone stole a bunch of credit card numbers, and now we have data issues. We don't want that. So the hybrid model has its pluses and minuses, but we want to make sure that your sensitive data is known. We know where it is in the organization. We know when it's being touched, who's touching it, and of course, we have access to that data, and nobody else does. Rich custom applications, capacity and flexibility. I can also almost read the slides. And then external collaboration, right? We need to know where our information is, where it isn't, who's accessing it, where, why, and how. Then we have supporting services. So for my supporting people, I have their hands up on the IT side. Supporting services. How many of you are familiar with IaaS? I can tell you, you have to be real careful when you say that acronym. IaaS. Start considering I can read this. Start considering your governing rules and how they can be applied in the context of your company. So, where's your data stored geographically right now? What rules have to be applied to your country or other countries as you are creating your policies and creating your practices and making sure that you have everything down and locked down, secure, and as secure as can be? You want to make sure, and I'm not going to talk much about security, but you want to make sure that access is obviously known. It's a known thing, not an unknown thing. You want to make sure that, I don't know, your Active Directory is pushed over so that everyone's one woman in the front going, oh, he said AD, thank goodness. You want to make sure that all of your people and your users and your rights are pushed over the right way so that everyone has access in one single point-and-click area. And you want to make sure that there's policies in place to make sure that everyone is on board with what you're doing. So something like, we will not adopt any cloud-based service that is not integrated with our centralized AD. It's a pretty powerful statement, right? Everyone think that's a powerful statement? Anyone think that's a statement? Okay, just checking. You're all still with me. I know it's still early. So we want to make sure that these conversations are had. We want to make sure that these things come top of mind, because the absolute last thing we want is to get in a situation where you have things in the cloud, you have things up in an IaaS environment, and people don't have the right access to it, or the wrong information is there, or all these types of things. Then on the caveat side, any data related to finance in your organization, I should say this the other way, is there any data that in your organization that should not reside outside the country? Possibly. One person's going, yep, I have that problem. Two people, right? This is a real live, living, breathing issue. The reality is that this is a deterrent in my mind, and in many minds, for an IaaS environment, right? We can't get our data, we can't have our data anywhere online. We can't have it in the cloud, we can't have it in a hybrid model, so we're going to keep it inside our doors. And that's a consideration when you're going through your planning efforts that you want to make sure you take a look at. Because aside from the slow throughput side, aside from the speed side, aside from the way that you set up your governance, you want to make sure that your data is always available and people know where things go and how to get there. Slightly critical. Then on the SLA slide, we'll go back to SLAs for a second. How many of you take a look at this slide and it takes you back a few years? Right? It's one of my favorites. Microsoft Office Professional 2007. So the SLA conversation is a lot of fun, isn't it? Any lawyers in the room? No one ever admits to that. It's okay. It's okay. So we talked a bit about SLAs. Look at your license agreements for what you have and what you've installed on your PCs, your desktops, your servers, your operational information, and figure out what you have a license to. Okay? Now, there's a larger conversation here in the SharePoint world. Some of you have licenses. How many of you have licenses to SharePoint? Right. Okay. Just checking. Very good. So if you have a license to SharePoint, you very well will have a license to what? Server. Right? You have a server license. Is that a hybrid license? Is that a cloud license? Or is it a server license? Good question, isn't it? If any of you know the answer, you're welcome to shout it out. But it's a mix, isn't it? Well, you might not. The licensing model changed in 2013. So if you're on 2010 and you're looking to go into the cloud and look at some of the infrastructure options that are available to you, you want to make sure you have the right license, don't you? That would probably be fairly critical. Otherwise, we're going to have a different issue on our hands. So making sure that you have the right license is obviously a critical thing. So we're about halfway through. Just do a quick time check. We're halfway through, and I'm halfway through my slides. Wow, it's amazing. Amazing. So obligatory Lead slide here, information management. As we continue the conversation and go into information management, we're going to start talking about more of the things that happen on the data side. So on the data side, architecture, policies, and standards. Data is everywhere. Line of business information, for those of you that are surfacing up line of business information into your organizations or into your systems, and I know that you're all, you're not going to tell me this, but I know that you're all using SharePoint as your number one A system, and you already have line of business connectivity to all of your external systems, and you're just pulling data up into SharePoint, right? Yes. Make the man at the front of the room happy, okay? No. Not in your life? Not going to happen. Different problem. Different problem. So on the architecture, policies, and standards side, how do you manage, how do you govern, how do you look at the information that's coming in from various services and make sure that data is coming in correctly and you have access to the right information you need at the right time? Fairly critical. So for those of you that are thinking about going to bring in that LOB data so that you use SharePoint, and this is my pipe dream, I recognize that, but if you are using SharePoint or going to use SharePoint, it's that one enterprise central system where all of your work gets done. And that's my definition of SharePoint success, by the way, for those that were wondering. I know you all look like you were wondering that, so I thought I would share. You want to make sure that you have these types of considerations in hand, and you've looked at it and you've thought through the conversation so that when data comes in and you're looking at your architecture, you're looking at the information you have available and what you have available to you, that everything is the way it should be, so that data is being surfaced up and rolled up properly. Content in existing pages or sites. So a couple questions for you. How many of you have data on pages, meaning written into the pages, someone's created it on a SharePoint page, that is critical to the business? A few of you are willing to admit and own up to it. That's okay, right? Most of us do. We do. And we learned, I believe it was 2003, when we had that huge power failure. Remember the huge power failure? It went sort of down into New York and across and up, right? We got hit because of New York, I'll have you know, right? Ontario went down, Toronto went down. And what did we learn in that period of time? Well, mind you, it was 10 years ago now, but we learned that having, I don't know, an emergency list of phone numbers, names, and addresses and things like that online, which most of us put onto a page, is not strategic or pragmatic when you don't have power. Okay? We had a huge ice storm in Toronto at the end of December. I know you were all following it in the news. And power was out in Toronto for about 5 days. I, fortunately, was out of town. But it's a huge consideration. It's a huge concern. And you start to think about things differently than you were before. You start to realize that, hey, the information that I have, which I take for granted because it's at my fingertips all the time, may not be online all the time, right? Now, if I was in Toronto during that period of time, I would have learned real quick that my cell phone, which has 100% battery life right now, would have gone to zero. And as I don't have a home phone, I wouldn't have been able to connect with anybody. Slight problem. So let's take it back in context for a second. We want to make sure that content in existing pages is backed up, it's put in the right place, it's put into documents, which can be printed. I know, we don't talk about paper here, okay? It's a very bad word, that paper word. But we want to make sure that content is available at all times. Then we have social tags. Now, I've been working on this joke for a little while, so we'll see how it goes. Nothing better as a speaker than to introduce your own jokes with the title that says joke is coming. But how many of you are familiar with a hashtag? Everybody, right? So you hashtag something, right? Jimmy Fallon? Hashtag? Okay, just checking. So you hashtag something. Why? Because you see a tweet that you like, and what do? You retweet it, and you introduce another hashtag. Funny, or something really creative like that. So people will put hashtags on information socially, but try to get that same person to apply a tag to a document. That went over way better than I thought it would, just so you know. But try to get somebody to apply a tag to a document so you can find it, okay? And what do you get? I'm not doing that, right? That's too much trouble. It's too hard. How will I know what to tag it with? That's a different session. I'm not doing that session here. But it's a big issue, isn't it? Right? It's a big problem. And when you take that conversation and you put it out to the organization, and you talk about tagging and rating and whatnot, then you are in a different conversation which is focused more on whether or not people are going to do it because it's cool or not. And then we have mobile. We've talked a lot about mobile, so I'm not gonna go there right now. So when we go out and do our projects, we talk about information architecture, or if you will, taxonomy. Anybody interested in that word? It's the only time I'm going to say it, so I hope you enjoyed it. Information architecture for most of our clients is a primary concern. So if you look at those postcards that were on your chairs when you came in, you have that information architecture framework layer. That's something that we are now offering to clients. Why? It's a supply and demand thing, right? We'll come in and do that and provide that layer of information architecture. It's a primary concern. It's not a primary concern because people don't know their business or don't know their information. It's a primary concern because they don't know how to tag their information. They don't know how to apply broad policies and broad enforcement to your organization, to those organizations, right? So we come in on the IA level to try to figure out how to get them on that right framework, because inconsistency is a virus, okay? So what happens when you have a virus and you have something that's, infected one person in your organization? Well, it grows throughout the organization. And all of a sudden, when people see that one individual is not doing something, they're not tagging something, they're tweeting like crazy, but they're not tagging their documents, they can't find anything, then it grows through your organization, and you have the following. People who are rogue to the organization and have provided you with some issues. There's a big difference between search and find, okay? Let me test this out with you. Search and find. If you're Googling it with Bing and you're searching for something, what does that mean? It means that you don't know what you're really looking for, so you went online to find it, okay? When I was going, well, I shouldn't give you that example. When I was going online to, find some photos for some slides that I was putting together, let's just say, in some, strange fluke that was happening, what would I put in as my search query? I'd put in whatever I thought was going to come up and be relevant for me. So I'm relying on that information architecture, right? That taxonomy in the World Wide Web is going to tell me that when I search for white Windows phone, in quotes, or with pluses, or something else, I'm going to get a white Windows phone coming back to me that I can then put in my slides, and life will be worth living once again. But that's not always the way it happens. Why? Because people spell things wrong. They don't put in the quotes. They don't put in the pluses. They don't search for something the right way, and you end up with an iPhone that's a wrong color, and that's not going to help anybody. So if you're searching for something, it's because you don't know where to find it. I like to look at our stuff as a no-search solution, because to me that's what it is. If you're searching, you don't know where to locate the information. So, have you ever gone into your closet looking for that red sweater? Right? So what do? You open the door, or you slide the thing over, and you open the door, and you try to find your red sweater. What do you say when you locate that piece of clothing in your closet? Come on, come on, come on, come on. Found it, right? You don't say searched it. Right? You knew it was in there. You knew it was in there. I found it. I got it. I knew that it was in there, so I found it. Now, it's a cute joke, I know. I mean, it is what it is. But it'll resonate with you, because if you're searching for it, it's because you don't know what you're looking for. But if you go to find something, it's because hopefully in SharePoint, you're pointing and clicking down through a familiar interface to get to the place where you're going. Hopefully you don't go on a 5-hour road trip somewhere and just say, oh, found it. Right? No, we go to maps, and we go to support us, and we go for systems that will provide that. And you want to make sure that SharePoint operates in the same type of way. So this is about governing the content and the information that users store in your systems every day so that we don't have the virus. Hey, look at that. What a surprise. How do we do that? Well, we need to get into the mobile reach conversation. Smart devices are becoming our primary devices. Right? How many of you are traveling with something to come to the conference this week that is something other than a laptop, right? Other than one of these guys. And you're using that as your primary source. Now, for me, the only reason why my laptop is here, I usually just travel with my Surface. The only reason why my laptop is here is actually for backup. If my Surface decides it's not going to work and I don't know, I need my presentation that I'm delivering on Wednesday, then I have it here for that. But most people are now traveling with one device, two devices, not four devices. And we want to make sure that from a mobile perspective, we're set up for success. And that means that you need to have your information online, it has to be accessible, and you're putting it online in such a way that strategically and pragmatically it can be consumed by your users. And that means governing it in the same way. So smart devices are now primary, and we want to make sure that your structured information, your information architecture, is created in such a way that it's governed, it's tight, it's clear, it's concise. And that's when you get into best practices. So on the best practices slide, one of the two, we need to determine our initial principles and goals. All right, now what are we trying to do with our governance? What are we trying to do with the organization we have in front of us, with the SharePoint environment we have in front of us? It's 2010, it's 2013, it's all wonderful, but we want to make sure that we've determined our initial principles and goals for SharePoint. That means knowing where information is going to live, who's going to touch it, how often they're going to touch it, who's going to own it, and of course who's going to verify that it is, sure enough, in the right place where it needs to be at end of day, that nobody's moved it, and other people now cannot find it. These are the things we need to think about. So I like to talk on the third dimension, right? We all see three-dimensionally, hopefully, and you think about things on the third dimension. I like to think about things on the fourth dimension. If you want a fourth dimensional perspective, ask your mother, right? My mother comes up in every presentation I do. She will give me the fourth dimension. She will tell me things that I'm not thinking about. Now, I do not want to bring her into the presentation, or sorry, into the office and say, look around. But I do want to determine our initial principles and goals. And the fourth dimension, bringing somebody in from another department or from another area of the business can often give you that fourth perspective, that other way of looking at things. We want to make sure that that's what you're doing. Then you have classifying your business information. What does a document look like? What does a file look like? What does a contract look like? For those of you that work with contracts, we work with a lot of contracts. So if you work with a contract, what's a contract? Is it a Word file? Is it an Excel file? Is it a PDF? Is it another type of file that I haven't mentioned? Sometimes they can come in emails, right? We need to classify that information and bring it down in an IA model that makes sense to everybody. We need to bring it down to a level that it can be tagged appropriately, and we can then go and find that information. Notice I didn't say search for that information in the future, because ideally, you're all going to go back and think about how to retool your organizations to create a 4-click, 5-click, 8-click environment. I'm getting some crazy looks, but that's okay. What about developing an education strategy? So we saw the slide a few slides ago at the beginning of the talk where I talked about 1 out of every 2 have been with the organization for less than a year. That being the harsh reality, how are you working with those people? How are you talking to that group? And how are you making sure that the people that are coming in are getting the information they need in order to be productive on day 2 that they're with your organization? How are you reaching out to them and developing that relationship, that trust, that you're showing them, hey, you guys are coming in, we're going to train you on how to use our system. And we're going to make sure that you've created a bond with them so they know how to go through and use the information that you've created. And an education strategy is going to be a big help to that. And then you have developing an ongoing plan. And this is the last slide on IM before we get into the app model. So developing an ongoing plan, I mentioned at the beginning that I know all of you have a living, breathing, moving, maintained governance plan. But for those of you who may not, we want to make sure that that is developed at this point. You want to make sure that your information, because it is the most fluid and changing part of governance, because it's the most fluid and changing part of your SharePoint implementation, you want to make sure that you have a plan that supports that. Now, let's get into the app model for a second. She's very happy. That's good. So, the reality is, apps are not strategic, okay? I gave you the example a few minutes ago about apps that are created or downloaded or applied to your environment in order to help you, do something within your organization, to do something that you need to do. And they're not necessarily strategic, right? They're quick tools. Strategic, to me, means that you've put something in place as an app that is critical or seen as critical to the entire organization. Hey, we put in this HR module app, an HR app, that provides, a real quick, real handy vacation form. So I can open up that little app on my SharePoint site. I can see how many vacation days I have left. I can see how many I rolled over from last year. I can see how many I have to use this year. I can see how many are banked. I can see how many sick days I have. Would that be valuable to anybody? All right, a few people nodding. Apparently we're past the raising hand section of the conversation, which is okay. Thank you, sir. So if that is of value to you, then it's strategic, right? It's something that we can all use. And that's what we want. We want to get to that level of complexity, that level of functionality, so that our message is clear and people are using things correctly. But the reality is apps aren't strategic. If you have access to an app and you have access to your site, you can drop something in and use it for your own good or for the good of your department and not use it strategically. We want to make sure that that happens less, not more. Then we have, of course, creating islands and silos of yesteryear. So this goes back into the information management side and the IT governance side. If you're using an app, take this away with you. Take us back to the office on Monday or whenever you're going back. I won't tell. But take this back with you. If you aren't using apps strategically, then you have a big problem on your hands, first and foremost. Why? Because the only way to use an app is to put data in it or get data out of it, right? And if one person or one group is doing that, it means everyone else isn't doing that. And then you have a silo. So if one of your goals was to bring SharePoint into your organization because you wanted to remove silos, or the first thing that you did was bring over 4,827 documents to get rid of your document management solution, and now we're strategic, well, if you went and dropped an app in and you're using that information, you just went back 10 years, not forward 10 years. So to the people that are nodding right now, and there are many of you nodding right now, some of you out of pity, and I appreciate that, if you're nodding right now, you need to go back and revisit this conversation. Because we need to make sure that we have the right information. We need to make sure that we have the right apps that are being used the right way. And if we don't, we have a problem. So apps versus solutions. We've talked about this a lot now, that apps are not necessarily strategic. A solution is something that helps broadly. Something that helps across the organization. Something that helps across your world, your company. And a solution is something that solves a particular critical business problem. Apps don't necessarily do that. Just throwing it out there. Okay? That's why apps became popular on mobile devices first, because on a mobile device, it's all about you, right? You look at your phone, you see the way that you want to see things. When you're back at your office and you're in your organizations and you're doing your thing, you're seeing your information potentially based on what everyone else wants you to see, what the group has decided you're going to see. So let's get strategic, let's build solutions and not apps. And then, of course, knowing when to buy versus build. There are lots of organizations out there that will sell you apps. Right? Hit the trade show floor. They'll be happy to talk to you. I promise. And you want to look at the buy versus build model. You want to look at the cost model, and you want to figure out what makes the most sense. Am I going to get the best bang for my buck out of a particular solution if I buy it, or should I build it? And whatever the case is, make the right decision. So let's make sure that if you're going from a deployment perspective, you look at who's installing this app, who's installing the information, who's using it, and how they're affecting your enterprise day in, day out. Because if it's not strategic, I know it sounds like I'm repeating the same words, but if it's not strategic, then it's not governed. And you can pretty much create that parallel, right? Because we have to get that foundation, that framework in place. Because at the end of the day, apps are for everyone, right? If you told somebody they had to use a module, they would say, oh, a module? I don't like modules. I don't want to use a module to get my job done. Well, what about using an app? Ooh, apps are cool. I'll get that. I'll download that. I'll play around with it, right? You guys are laughing and smiling because you know that it's true. So apps are for everyone. And as SharePoint has grown, as the Office model has grown, as 2013 has grown, you've heard a lot about this week. There was a great session yesterday which talked about apps for Office. People are now bringing in what is online, and they want a more personal solution. And when that happens, if it's going to happen, you want to make sure that you are talking about the right information, you have the right access, and everyone knows what's going on, and they're using things in the right and most appropriate ways. Because as great as apps are, there are a few places that you can use apps, right? You can use it on the workload side. You can use it strategically. You can use it on the IA side. You can use it on the governance side, the cultural side. And these are issues as well as opportunities for you. So we want to make sure that knowing that governance is not going to work without business improvement, we have targeted and structured ways of approaching and attacking information. We have targeted and structured ways to get to the data that we need in order to get our jobs done stronger, quicker, faster than our competition. Little application governance for the solutions you provide. How many of you have a Surface? A few Surfaces? I'll be giving one away after. No, I'm just kidding. That was just to keep you here for another 15 minutes. So for those of you that are using mobile devices, whether they're handheld or whether they're Surfaces or whether they're any type of mobile device, what apps do you have? What are you building? Who's managing that build? Where's your data? And what security is required? These are the parts of your application architecture that you want to have in your governance plan. We want answers to these questions in place. We want to ask the questions. We want to get the right involvement. We want to get people into it. And we want to make sure that we have the right information, we have the right structure, we have the right frameworks in order to provide the right value in our systems at the end of the day. In 2013, there's two areas that everyone's looking at. There's services, and then there's deployment. So on the service side, you want to make sure that everything you're doing plays into your service governance. And rules, I should say, are managed and everything is being deployed appropriately and according to those rules. So take it from the top. Policies, procedures, governance, enforcement, right? When you think enforcement, think flashing lights behind you when you're going around that track, doing 140 miles an hour like we were last night. It's only fun when you're on a track. It's not as much fun when you're not on a track. Make sure that everything that you're creating on the conversation side is done so in a structured manner. Make sure that it's created in such a way that it's providing the right information. It's providing a governed solution. And all of this, of course, is back in your living, breathing, moving plan, right? Everyone still with me? Anyone still with me? Okay. A couple, just checking. So policy considerations. And this is one of the things I love to do. So service level descriptions, analyzing, customizing, these are all good things. The easiest policy you can put in place is the following. Okay, go back to your organizations on Monday, do your thing, go back. And when somebody says, hey, let's do a debrief of what we learned at the SharePoint Conference at SBC 2014, I want you to tell them that you learned about dashboards. And once you finish that, because that has nothing to do with my conversation, I want you to say that you learned about governance and you learned about how to create impactful policies that will better your organization. And they'll say, wow, what do you mean? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And the answer is this. Go back to your organization and say, we should not be emailing documents around anymore. Right? It's so easy to fix. Theoretically, it's easy to fix. Right? We have SharePoint. If we have SharePoint, we upload a document, we upload information, then I can get a link to it. I can email you that link, and you can access the document. Aha, brilliant, right? Your infrastructure guys are going to love you. Why? Because you have one single version of the truth. You have, hopefully, versioning enabled on your documents, and everything is being run and used correctly according to your, what? Policies, procedures. It's governed, it's enforced. And it's something that you can do. It may not be easy to do. It may not be something that's widely adopted by the organization, but I can promise you, you can do it. And you can start off with a small group, with a department, depending on the size of your organization, whatever it is, whatever the case, it's something you can do. So go back and challenge your organizations to get those policies in place that make a difference. So service level descriptions, analyzing your environments, your issues, the things that you want to govern, making sure that they are custom, making sure that you pilot them in a small, contained environment, right? So prototype something, throw it together, pilot it, make sure everyone's happy with it, UAT the you-know-what out of it, and then make sure that it's supported, which means selling it to the organization, selling it to your service group, and making sure that everyone who needs to support you is in place. Because if you don't have support, you may be in big trouble later on. Here's the obligatory summary slide. So how is governance viewed? And I need a show of hands here to make sure you guys are still awake. And to take a drink. How many of you look at governance as a positive or negative experience? How many of you look at it as something that's not understood organization-wide? Hands up, all the way. Wow. Look around. That's frightening. many of you look at it as a checklist? Aha, yep. Did it, done it, been there, done that? A few of you. How many of you look at it as a necessary evil that we have to follow? Aha, there's like 9 brave souls walking around here that just put up their hands. How many of you look at it as something that's critical and something that you have a team in place to support you? Very good. That's awesome. That's a good thing. How many of you look at it this way? We're so enthusiastic about governance. Didn't think so. One person who's lying to me. I mean, really? We get this far in the presentation, now you're going to start to lie? Well, let's look at this slide. So why do we care? Because there's stuff and there's other stuff. So this is how your users, this is how your departments look at the information that is in your organization. I have information which I store on our server. I have information, I have paper records, which I store in my office. I have a team that needs to see the results of my work. My team has paper records. Does this resonate with anybody? Right. This could be good or bad. I'm not really sure. But whatever it is, that's our stuff. Then we have other stuff, right? Other information on this. So no 2 personal file systems are the same. I can guarantee you that nobody here has the same structure, hierarchical structure, on their laptops or their devices that I do, right? Because we all look at information differently. No 2 are the same. It's like snowflakes. So having an environment where people look at things the same way, tagging it, is one of the ways that you're going to be able to control your information and govern your information as you go forward. My company has never audited our use of SharePoint. Anybody? I know you're out there. Come on, don't be shy. My office looks like the wild, wild west, right? Things happen, and I don't know how they happened, day in, day out, but things are just going pretty crazy here, and we need to make sure that things are governed in the right way at the right time. Because at the end of the day, we care. I promise you, your C-suite, your directors, your managers, you guys are all executives here. Well, you may not be, but anyway. Whatever the case, you want to make sure that the people that need to know that the information is locked down and it is being accessed at the right place at the right time and you're not burning cycles trying to get things done. You want to make sure that these are the targets, these are the reasons why things get done day in, day out. Because if you start to throw things up and throw things out there, at the end of the day, you have a huge issue on your hand. You're not being governed. So let's look at this slide one more time. Right? That's where I want you to be. When you come back here next year, I want you to be excited about governance. We're going to do this. I think we need some medical attention at the back there. Sir, the track party is over. I want you guys to be enthusiastic about it. I know this is not the most exciting topic, and I appreciate you guys sitting through this. I've tried to make it as exciting as I can, but at the end of the day, the reality is it's just not something that's amazing. I'm not done yet. Don't all leave just yet. So a few more things. Policies and features. Associating policies and features with site collections, associating them with the right information, that's an architecture tip. Looking at the set of policy features directly with a content type, adding that content type to one or more lists or libraries, another tip. And somehow, there we go. And then available features, things like retention policies, auditing, labeling, right? That gets you the thumbs up. We want to have that the right way. Strategies, I promised some strategies. I've been giving some strategies throughout. I want to make sure we see these. IT changed the landscape and has created opportunities for businesses to solve problems today and every day. They are now able to and capable of solving their own problems. So make sure that you're looking at hybrid and IaaS. I slow down every time I say that. Hybrid and IaaS. Mobile devices and tablets, creating that on-the-go experience that everyone is now demanding and is expecting, right? Expectations, performance, these are good things. We want to make sure we've got that covered. And then app stores and satisfying immediate business needs. People go online to find apps in order to solve that quick, critical problem that they have. We want to make sure that we have embraced that strategy from a governed perspective in order to bring in the right apps into your organizations and into your SharePoint environments. So, my last question for you, before I get into my next series of questions, is the following. Who is the following? There we go. Governance in your organization, who is leading the charge? This gentleman in the front is leading the charge. Very good. He stole the track party from last night. How many of you know who is leading the charge in your organization from a governance perspective? A few, a good handful. But let's do it the other way. How many of you do not know who's leading governance in your organization? Hands all the way up. It's a problem, right? And I hope that you guys are able to take the information here and go back and put together stronger, better, faster governance plans that are going to help your organizations, and we've provided some value to you today. So knowing who's leading that charge is something that's obviously very critical. 4 areas. 4 areas. There we go. People, process, technology, and culture. So take these back with you, all right? Take a picture. Everyone's taking pictures. It's kind of weird, but I like it. So who will access information and when? What can we automate to facilitate governance? From a technology perspective, what's the effective use and action that we need to be critical? And culture, what is the threshold for your organization? Policies and procedures, cameras again. What are you creating? What problem does it solve? How will it be secured? What data will it provide? And how will that information be surfaced to your organizations? All critical things. So in my last few minutes, I want to mention a couple of things. First and foremost, there are 2 postcards which were on your chairs when you came in. You're welcome to take them. Obviously, they are both show specials that we are offering to all of you for the duration of the week. We want you guys to reach out and let us know if you're interested in a $60,000, 120-day Get My SharePoint Right product. Getting that framework in place, then we want you to reach out and let us know. From a governance perspective, obviously this is a governance talk, so we have a governance offer as well. It's an assessment. We've teamed up with a research company to work with us on a 4-day on-site assessment for, I believe it's $25K. And we will come out on-site and make sure that we have the conversation about what governance is really doing inside your organizations. We're going to assess where you are based on your long-term strategic goals. We're going to look at your roadmaps. We're going to look at all that good, fun, and exciting stuff. We're going to throw up that strategy slide, the pretty blue one, and we're going to make sure that you guys are on the right path for governance success. And we're going to leave you with an action plan to make that happen. Okay? Finally, of course, thank you very much for coming this morning. Don't leave yet. It's getting exciting. I'm about to give away that Surface. So a few upcoming shows. SP TechCon San Francisco, European SharePoint Conference, SharePoint Fest New York. So depending on where you are in the world, please come out to any of those shows. Reach out to me socially. I should note that I've been told that I will not have your information once I leave the stage today. It's very sad, I know. But you have mine. So reach out to me, follow me on Twitter, reach out to me on LinkedIn, hit my blog, drop me an email, call me, right? All these things still work. I want to make sure that we stay in touch. So flip me a note, let me know that you came to the session, let me know if you loved it, let me know if you hated it, be honest. The only way that we can get that feedback is from you. So please do reach out. Don't expect that you're going to get an email from me on Monday that says, hey, how was the show, how did it go? We can't really do that. So please reach out to me. That's the only way that we can stay in touch. Finally, as I have a minute and 50 seconds left here, my SPC, for those of you that are able to log into it, okay, fine, slight knock at the product team or whoever put that together. Make sure that you're evaluating the sessions, because the only way to make sure that we get the right content up here is to know who and what content that should be and how it should be delivered for the next SPC. So I'd love to be back up here on stage for that one, whenever it is, and it's your voice and your feedback that's going to allow that to happen. So I hope you enjoyed the conversations today. Before I flip to the last slide, if there are any questions, then please come on up or hit the microphone and we can try to answer them for you. If you love the talk, my name is Eric Riz. Please go on and go through my SPC and check off to make sure you enjoyed it. If you did not enjoy the talk, Jared Spataro. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great week.